What's up, everybody? Coach Mills here, coming at you with a brand new Valorant video. And in this video, we're going to be breaking down things that you can do to destroy Smurfs and carry throwers in your games. And I know a lot of you have been having problems with Smurfs, problems with throwers, and you feel like ranked is just an RNG fest, but it's not completely random. You have the power to control a lot of your wins and losses, and I'm going to be breaking all that down so that you can climb the ladder with ease. But go to the Game Leap website to climb the ladder even quicker with in-depth advanced VODs over every single agent. We got map guides, we got weapon courses. I mean, we got everything you could possibly need to climb the ladder. So do yourself a favor, go check it out in the links down below. But without further ado, let's jump into the video. Now, right off the bat, there are 3 big misconceptions that we have to break down right away to give you the best shot mentally at actually winning up against specifically Smurfs and winning a lot of these games that feel unwinnable. Now, the first and most important thing that you need to understand about Smurfs is that Smurfs are not always smurfing from Radiant. Every time someone goes up against a Smurf on the enemy team, they just assume, oh, it's obviously TenZ. TenZ is ruining my freaking games for the 5th time. No, it's not TenZ ruining your games. Now, can there be very high-ranked players smurfing in your games? Yeah, possibly, but here's something that you might not know. If people win their games in unrated, a lot of the time they will automatically have a high MMR and they will not be placed in the lower ranks. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't end up in high silver, in gold, in platinum, but a lot of the time, if a person is a very high rank or even a mid-high rank, they're not going to end up in your games even on a Smurf. And more than that, a lot of the Smurfs that will end up in your games might be smurfing for 1 or 2 ranks as an ego boost. They're not some unstoppable force. They are just people that are smurfing, playing with their buddies or whatever the case may be. That doesn't mean that they're not stoppable. That doesn't mean that they're better than anything that you could possibly contest with. That just means that they're a little bit better than the average. But there are things that you can do to counteract that. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. Now, something that you really need to understand is sometimes you'll have Smurfs that are on the enemy team just bodying you, and you'll have throwers on your team and you can't win. But the giant amount of the time, players will have a Smurf on their team and a throw on the enemy team, but they won't remember those moments because as humans, we think about the negatives that happen a lot more than the positives that happen, even if we really didn't deserve the plus side of RNG. But let's talk about the tips that you can use versus Smurfs to give yourself the best shot at winning, even in spite of going up against some people that are better than their rank shows. Now, the first thing that you should try to be doing, just in general, is identify who is smurfing, or plain and simply, identify who is playing good on the enemy team. And really, you should be doing this against everybody, but with Smurfs, it works exceptionally well. You need to take note about what characters they're playing, how well they're playing. If you notice that someone on the enemy team is really dominating again and again, they're ahead on paper and they just come in and they just absolutely body every single one of you, you need to start taking note of that person. So what do you do when you identify a threat? Well, it's pretty obvious. You research that threat and you find as much information about that threat as possible. And relating that to Valorant, you need to take note of where they're positioning, how they're holding, how they're pushing. What cooldowns are they using and what abilities do they have? And it's also important to relay that information to your team. Knowing that the enemy Reyna, for instance, has no Leers anymore is a very important thing to actually tell to your team, especially if that person is someone who is really playing very well. Making sure that you get as much information as possible can help you fight them on a different axis rather than just running in blind and dying to the same person again and again when they are doing the same strategy that y'all aren't countering. Now, the next thing that you could do, and this is very important, and is you can set up scenarios that make it exponentially more difficult to clutch. Put the enemy Smurf in a 2v1 scenario where both of you know where they are, and maybe you set up an ability combo or you set up a double swing where the enemy has to somehow kill both of you, or even more so, put them in a retake scenario where maybe you saw them, you got a little bit of value, you baited out some utility, and instead of taking a full-on fight with them, giving them a chance to clutch up, you go and rotate to the other point, take that point control, and put the enemy Smurf in a retake scenario that is just going to put a lot more pressure on their individual abilities. And then the last thing that you could do is rely a lot more on your ability use, like I said with ability combos, but just abilities in general, going away from that gunplay that they are probably going to be, better at than the average, and relying on other things that are going to get more guaranteed value and that even some of the best players can die to, notably all the crazy abilities that are in the game. Now that really goes back to the third point that I really wanted to harp down, and it's avoid raw mechanical based duels, especially solo. If you really notice that the enemy duelist or whoever is playing out of their mind, and maybe for whatever reason you're not able to compete with them, this is not the time to die on a hill of being inferior. Some people are like, okay, if I can't 1v1 this person, then I can't win this game. And they keep peeking the window and dying, and keep peeking the window and dying. And they're like, I will 1v1 this person. I will get the leg up in the matchup. But remember what we said about getting smurfs and throwers is pure RNG? You do not have to die on this hill, and you can still win this game as long as you stop getting farmed. Don't play into what the smurf wants you to play into, and just because you couldn't out mechanic this person in this one game doesn't mean you don't deserve a rank up, doesn't mean you don't deserve to climb, but it's really important that you prevent yourself from feeding again and again up against this smurf. Now, speaking of smurfs, we talked about this in the beginning, how a lot of the time when you are actually playing against smurfs that are like a couple ranks above their rank, which is typically the majority of smurfs you're gonna run into, to be honest, just from a numbers standpoint. I mean, there are very, very few Immortal and Radiant players compared to the rest of the players in the game. You're probably most likely getting players in the Diamond and Plat rank actually smurfing down. But the thing I said about those players is a lot of times they're playing with their duo partner. And if you play with a dual partner that you're much better than for any substantial amount of time, what happens? They really drag that person way ahead of where they should be, and that is a notable weakness in the enemy team. You'll notice it right away when maybe based on how they comms or just looking at the scoreboard, one person has like 12, 14 kills, whatever, and the other person has 1 or 2. That is a weakness in the enemy team that you can actually abuse again and again. And just how you're noticing where the enemy smurf is setting up, what abilities they're using, you're also noticing where the enemy bad or poor player is setting up, where they're holding, and what gap in the armor of defense does the enemy have that you can really abuse. And that's one way to kind of make up for the fact that one person on their team is performing pretty well, is by abusing the weakness that they also have. Now, the one thing that you absolutely can't do when up against smurfs is you cannot ever play loose based on advantage. You see this all the time where maybe it's a 4v2 or even a 4v1 and everyone's just running around the map. They're like, oh, I'm gonna go chase down this eco frag, I'm gonna go chase down this kill, I'm gonna run around the corner, whatever. You cannot play overly loose just because you have an advantage, because you give this person any amount of free space, free value, and they might take that and turn a 2v4 into a 2v2 into a 2v0, and they won. And it's all because you just played overly loose, you didn't play disciplined. And you always got to remember in the back of your mind that a game can swing from you being up like 10-2 to 10-10 to you losing because the momentum really swung in the enemy's favor. Now moving on to the sixth thing that is incredibly important for your development as a player, improving and going and climbing the ranks of Valorant, is in this game, when you're up against a smurf, your back is against the wall, you know that this game is unbalanced, unfair, whatever. You can make a million excuses, but it's now or never for you to go above and beyond. You honestly say that you deserve a higher rank. Well, now's your time to prove it, because like I said, they're most likely only a couple of ranks above you, so do not get overly scared of this person. Understand that they are performing really well, but test yourself against players who better. Let this fuel your practice. Learn from these players. What are they doing that is so strong? What are they punishing you for that other players normally don't punish you for? And is that a fundamental mistake with you that you need to fix? Because eventually, those type of players are going to be the players surrounded all around you in your rank as you climb. And if you keep making the same mistakes that this person is punishing you for, you're never going to be able to hang with those players when you climb there. So this is a really important way to actually earn yourself or climb yourself. Because here's the big takeaway, and this is something that is really, really important for everyone to understand. Yes, there are going to be smurfs in every game. Yes, there's going to be throwers, and they're going to be all over the place. That's in every single competitive game. Do you think that any single person that has climbed from the lower ranks of Valorant to the upper ranks hasn't had to face a whole bunch of smurfs? Hasn't had to have a whole bunch of throwers? Yes, every single person does. That's why in the comments section, every single video, people are talking about smurfs or throwers. It's because universally, everyone has to deal with it. You still have to win in spite of that. That's just how you climb. And this might be brutal, you might not like it, but it's 100% the truth, and it can be really frustrating. But this leads me to the last thing that is really, really important. you need to not let your mindset dictate the games that you really do have the most amount of control over. A lot of times enemies will go up against that smurf, they'll get really discouraged, they'll lose their confidence, they'll get tilted, and then they'll take that into future games, and it really affects them as a player. Like, they're afraid to peek angles now because this really good player punished them for it, even when they themselves are really, really good. They just needed a little bit more mechanical practice, and you should use your punishes that happen up against smurfs to fuel your practice and training to get better, and from there, fuel your drive to climb even further. If you can keep a level head, not let yourself get jaded even by the losses that happen because of smurfs, but still give it your all and use these tips to either give that smurf a freaking run for his money, biting off more than he can chew because you're just playing out of your mind, and maybe you don't win, but you improve. And then you just make sure that you don't allow these losses to affect your future games. You will 100% become better, you'll adopt that competitive mindset, and you will climb. But the Game Leap website has everything else you need to climb the ladder. If you need targeted training, in-depth guides, aim drills, everything you could possibly need, do yourself a favor, go check it out in the links down below. But I hope you enjoyed the video. That's all I got for you today. I love yo faces, and I'll see you tomorrow.